Back, it's 20 minutes to 3 o'clock. Now, let's bring you this story. Mozambique's future remains uncertain as Islamist militants been pushed back. To add salt to that wound, Rwandan President Paul Kagame has told the country his troops cannot stay in the northern part of Mozambique forever. Rwandan soldiers have been in Cabo Delgado province as part of a mission aimed at recapturing areas from Islamist militants. They arrived back in July and were supposed to be there for only 3 months. The insurgency in Mozambique brewing since 2017, causing nearly 800,000 people to be displaced internally. So there is a humanitarian crisis that's been going on in that part of Mozambique, and of course several thousand more people have died. Let's discuss this now with Dr Laura Tomm-Bonde from the International Organization for Immigration, who today is in fact in Cabo Delgado's Pemba city, which is a capital city of that northern province of Mozambique. What's the situation like in Pemba today? Can we start there, Doctor?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me today. And indeed, I am here today in Cabo Delgado, Pemba. In fact, I've come up here for the last few days, obviously to come and encourage and motivate and provide support to IOM's teams, as well as the UN Humanitarian country team that's operating up here in Cabo Delgado, as well as having a number of very fruitful meetings with the government of Mozambique, and particularly the provincial government here. Indeed, the conflict dynamics have changed since Palma attacks in March, when I think we did meet each other back then and have a discussion as what was happening back in March. And access to remote areas continues to be a challenge for all humanitarian actors. The needs indeed continue to be evident, and the necessary for all and those affected need to be addressed and continue to need our support. You did speak about the figures of the displacement. In terms of IOM's displacement tracking matrix figures, we are at nearly 750,000 displaced people across the northern provinces. And up-to-date security and access restraints in areas such as Bacima de Praia, Mudumbi, as well as Palma have been limited, and data collection in those areas have been limited due to the fact that restrictions on access. So in fact, the data can be actually higher in those areas.
Yeah. So if you're having challenges still today to access some areas to provide humanitarian support, how is it getting to them? I mean, last night I was watching Mozambique television, and they were interviewing some residents of Palma, which was the scene of that big attack we saw in March. And when you and I last spoke here on ENCA, they were coming back. It's not a lot of people going back. They're still scared, but the Rwandan soldiers and Mozambican soldiers are on the ground promising them safety and security. How else is the UN and your colleagues there accessing the areas, providing support to the 750,000 displaced internal refugees, if we may call them that?
Well, as IOM, we do call them internally displaced peoples. And in fact, you are very much right. There has been ongoing displacements, largely triggered by the fear of attacks, as well as limited, restricted access to areas in these very limited districts where the security still remains compromised. But in fact, as you well know, and you pointed out earlier on in the interview, that various different forces and government forces, as well as external forces, have been responding to the challenges in northern Mozambique. This is a welcomed response. Their initiatives on behalf of all of these different forces that have come in to support the government of Mozambique shows a clear gesture of solidarity and common concern.
Dr. Laura, before we conclude, before we conclude now, and it's my final question to you, if you may, very briefly, what are the biggest humanitarian needs now? What are you needing? What are you hearing is needed from an assistance, a relief effort for the people who've been displaced?
Yeah, thank you. Well, the humanitarian needs remain ongoing and the same. I mean, always the biggest humanitarian needs in this type of displacement are things such as food, shelter, clean water, health, access to education for children are really the immediate needs, as well as access to economic sustainability, mental health, and psychosocial. In fact, the UN have been working very closely together with a number of other actors to provide what we call the Joint UN Response District of Palma in a recent example, which we've just done. And we've reached over 10,000 people in this hard to access area. So in fact, access, although it continues to be a challenge, we have been able to access these areas, and we're very, very pleased that we've been able to reach these people of needs. And this is going to be an ongoing challenge because the situation does remain fluid, but together with all of this amazing support from these different forces have enabled us to make a huge amount of difference up here so far.
Oh, thank you very much for your time. I'm sure we will touch base with you as time goes on, because from what we understand, currently the Islamist insurgents have been pushed back. The Rwandans and the Mozambican troops are on the ground trying to secure those various places. Thank you very much for talking to us this hour here on the Midday View.